welcome to another episode of Rare Conversations, and today I'm joined by Nick Fong, who it's a pleasure. You don't know, for me, I follow you, I'm a fan, and love what you've been doing, so it's great to have you up here. And this is in honor of the 20th anniversary of Rare. You're coming up to speak at a seminar today. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations on being such a... I think we met years ago at Costco. Do you remember that?
I kind of have a vague memory. I know we've met several times, but I think I remember you were, I think it was Cabo Agent.
Yeah, Los Cabos Agent, and it was, I remember what aisle we were on. It was just a couple off of the frozen section.
Okay.
And you introduced yourself, and I was like, oh, cool. And at that point, we weren't doing a lot of business in Todos Santos. And you're probably doing your monthly or bi-weekly run to Costco.
Yeah, it was a monthly, and now it's turned into more than that, actually. But it's funny because you've been here, what, 20 years?
20 years.
Yeah, and so I've been in business 20 years, but I've been down here 24. So I kind of remember pre-Costco, right? Like, I mean, when we were up here, we didn't have Costco, we didn't have, Walmart. It was kind of like shop locally, and every once in a while we'd get to say, or lay in La Paz. Yeah, it was kind of, so it's funny because there were people up here that we still like, were you pre-Costco or did you come afterwards? So I want to dive in. First of all, what you've done is amazing. How you've taken, it was Los Cabo Agents, now it's Ronival. You are the social media, I mean, you're the guru. You do your podcast. It's really fantastic. And just from my perspective, before we get into I wanted to say, like, from a broker perspective, you do some great podcasts, you do some great interviews, you have some great people on, but I think I want people to know, from my perspective as a broker in real estate in 20 years in Mexico, how much I admire the fact that you really know what you're speaking of. It's not just like, you're not just out there interviewing, you're actually providing people with facts and knowledge about the industry and in-depth stuff that I'm like, it really amazes me. Like, you have time to learn and study. You know taxes, I know that you're getting market trends and all that stuff, but you really know your stuff. And I just wanted to tell you, from a broker that admires you from afar, you do a really nice job of presenting that in a very humble way.
For me, it's been a lifelong, almost. Most of my adult life and professional life has been in real estate. And so I'm passionate about it. I like doing it. It's very rewarding, as you know, financially, emotionally, intellectually. And I try to bring that passion every day. And in doing so, you learn. Right? And in learning, I'm trying to transmit always what I learn to my team, and as a result to everyone else. So thank you. I appreciate that, from a broker owner to another broker owner, that you recognize that. It's
interesting because you can, there are people in Cabo, I've worked with other brokers that kind of, they funnel it out, and they kind of like, I don't really have to delve into that too much, but you have, the production end, the content end that you do, you have the knowledge to back it up, and I'm sure that comes from years of doing it. I take it that you're probably not going out on tours anymore.
Yeah, primarily, no, I don't.
Yeah.
But I do meet with clients all the time. Last night we had an event in our San Jose office. Every Thursday is the Art Walk, right? So I had clients coming in, past clients, new clients, current clients, and I interact with clients every day. It's just, I recognized years ago that the majority of my time was in my car showing properties. And it wasn't the highest and best use of my time, or I liked doing it, but it was a conscious decision. And it wasn't easy, but I did it, and anyone can do it.
It's kind of like, I don't, you know, I look at it, my time is better spent doing other things of growing the business, and I've kind of stopped doing tours unless I have an old client that only wants to be with me. But as I mentioned before we started the podcast, I saw you on a video this morning with Tom Ferry, who I think is part of your coaching team.
Yes.
And one of the things that you touched on, and it was so simple, you were talking about getting back to basics.
Yeah.
And washing your kid's uniform, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. And it just like, it's something small. I'm like, you know, some people may look at it as like, so what? I wash my kid, you know.
Right.
But it's really put into perspective. It makes a great point. And what you just said about meeting with clients continuously, because they do want to see you, right? They want to speak with you, and
Yep.
you know. And I think it's, you know, talking about back to basics. The way you've scaled your business, you're all everywhere. I mean, you're on the mainland now, right? You're in San Miguel.
Yeah, we have a presence in San Miguel, mostly in referral basis. And, you know, it's a phrase I like is your net worth is directly related to your network. And the stronger your network and more people you are in touch with that know who you are and that they influence you and you influence them, the better your business is. And so we get pulled in all different directions, and some of that geographically means in mainland Mexico.
Give us a little background on the evolution. I know you're from, not Illinois, not Chicago?
Chicago.
Or Chicago,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. You were doing real estate in Illinois.
A couple years in the early 2000s and real estate mortgages also. And then in 2001, I came on vacation and I met my wife, Rocio, on the second night. And we stayed in touch, we dated on and off, 2004, so December 2004, 20 years ago,
This month, huh?
This month.
Okay.
I moved there the day after Christmas.
Wow.
And it was, we got married a couple years later, got 2 kids, both teenagers now. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's been quite a journey.
And so let's talk about you started, it was your brokerage, Los Cabos agent, or
Yep.
were you?
Yeah, Los Cabos agent was started in 2010, so almost 15 years ago by Rocio and I. And I was the sales agent and she was the property manager.
And it was just the two of you?
Just the two of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of remember, I remember seeing Los Cabos agent, and I'm like, that's kind of a different name for a company. And so tell me about the evolution of Ronival.
Yeah. So in 2010, Los Cabos agent actually was started in 2007. So it was in the middle of the night, I was doing research and I was like, you know, there's this thing about SEO, websites, and very few companies and real estate agents in the Baja were actually paying attention to it. So I geeked out and I learned SEO and I built my website, and I needed a web address. So I just saw Los Cabos agent was free, I bought it, and there it goes, 2007. And I was working at a couple brokerages before, and I just had my own brand. So when I went off on my own in 2010, it made sense it would be Los Cabos agent, because that was my URL.
Right.
And a lot of people were visiting that website, lead generation and everything. But as you know, in Mexico, when you legally choose your name, you need to choose, like the attorneys say, 5 names that you know are unique. And so at the time, Rocio and I were thinking, okay, what if we take the initials of our family and combine them into a name? So Rocio and Rocco, our son, Nick and I, Sienna Valentina, Val. So if you combine it, it's Ronival. So it was a fictitious name made up by us.
That's great.
And of course it wasn't taken, and that was the legal name since the very beginning. And we didn't transition until 2019, because we started opening offices in Todos Santos, La Paz, Loreto, and it just made no sense because, you know, Todos Santos doesn't want to be associated with Cabo, right? It's quite actually the opposite for a lot of people. They're like, I don't want that Cabo vibe. That's too much partying tourism. I want something more quiet and tranquil, like Todos Santos. And so the first go at it was, okay, Todos Santos agent, Loreto agent, San Jose agent. And it was like, oh, that's like 6 different names. That doesn't make any sense. So I remember we were in La Paz, and the family, we were all together, and we're on the beach, and we recorded a video to launch the new name. And that was the birth of Ronival from a commercial standpoint 5 years ago.
Great story on the origin of the name. Nice. A lot of people come to me and ask me, how'd you get the name Ricardo Amico Real Estate? Where'd you come up with that? And I'm like, well, it's my name. They're like, what do you mean it's your name? And I'm like, well, my name is Richard Friend. They're like, no, that's how you came.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it's great to kind of be able to discuss the origin of how. Literally, mine was just like, why don't we just use my name? And you know, you spoke about Loreto, La Paz, Cabo, Todos. Now San Miguel, I think, is your last place that you've...
Yeah, at the end of last year, beginning of this year, we started forging away in San Miguel. Spent a lot of time there, great project. But as you've seen, and we all seen the change in the real estate market, we primarily pulled out of San Miguel strategically, and it's just referrals, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
So in a market like even San Miguel, Loreto, East Cape, Todos Santos was one of your first satellite offices?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's like you had just said, the Cabo agent wouldn't fly that well here, right? Because we're not Cabo. But what have you seen as some, going from different offices, different areas? What do you see on the Pacific side? One of the reasons for the seminar today is kind of, we've been trying to bridge that gap between Cabo and Todos, right? And you have a huge presence here, and it's relatively, I don't want to say new, because you've been operating out of, before you open an office here. But now you see, I think, significant results from some of your team, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not Cabo results.
Right.
How does it compare to some of the other satellite markets that you have offices in? And is it the only one that you have to deal with kind of ejido origin properties?
So the last question is no, the answer. We deal with that all over Baja California Sur. When you get into, say, Loreto, we're constantly having to deal with legal title issues, East Cape included, Todos Santos, obviously along the Pacific, when there hasn't been enough title transfers, or it's the first title transfer from ejido to actual title property.
Right.
So, but in terms of production, Todos Santos is second to our Cabo office. And I think it's because I look at Cabo as the heart of the tourism and real estate market for Baja California Sur, and Todos Santos in the Pacific is the closest to the heart. And so, and also infrastructure-wise, we have a 4-lane highway that connects the heart to the next biggest organ, which is Todos Santos, Cerritos, Pescadero. And where I see the next big move is La Paz. And so we've been selling out of La Paz for a number of years, but just this year we put a physical office in La Paz.
I saw that. I think Dan is kind of running Dan Benetti, who used to be here, is now running the La Paz office, and it shows your commitment to that area.
100%.
Yeah, and one of the things, like with Todos Santos, I'll kind of go back to your podcast. I remember you had a podcast one day with a guy from Costa Rica. I think his name was Scott Cutter.
Scott, yeah.
Is it Cutter? Or,
Cutler, yeah.
Okay. And I don't know if he was a friend of yours or you just knew him through the industry, but he was kind of, I paid really, like what he was saying and what you guys were speaking about, he was kind of speaking about Costa Rica, and you were making the comparison with Cabo, but there was kind of what he called the different coastal markets.
Right.
And I kind of I was like writing stuff down as the first time I'm like taking notes. I'm like, wow, this is really good stuff. And I actually used it in one of my sales meetings. I was like, he was talking about the resort destination. There were kind of three areas in Costa Rica. The resort destination, which would be Los Cabos here. The more of the national getaway being La Paz, right? Both having international airports, but La Paz kind of attracting more of an ecological kind of mainland tourist, right? And then Todos Santos, which I kind of think that was conveyed as kind of where Scott's Market was. And so I was like, that was the destination location, right? You still have to drive an hour and a half from the airport up here. And I was fascinated by, like, I was like, that's a great way to look at this, right? Industrial resort, right? Nationalistic, and what we have, right?
There's one thing that he said, that Scott said in that podcast, that was really interesting. I hadn't heard of it, but it's so true. And I'm gonna not get it word for word, but more or less his phrase was, bad roads, good people. And like worse roads, even better people, or something like that. And it's so true.
You said it to a T, because when he said those words, I was like, son of a gun, he stole my line. Because my mentor, one of my agents, like one of the first people I bought property from was one of my agent's fathers, okay? And he was kind of a mentor to me, just someone that really like taught me a lot about buying dirt, selling dirt. And I'd be like, Bob, like he used to live on a dead-end street on the beach in Pescadero in not a trailer, it was actually called one of those bowler, there was a name for that, I forget it now, but he was living in that, and I said, like, why do you choose to live all the way in the middle of nowhere on the beach? This is like 2000, right? And he goes, Rich, he goes, I've just found out, it's like, bad roads bring good people. And I was like, I gotta use that, right? And then I heard Scott say it, I'm like, son of a gun. He stole my So let's, I mean, I know, I'm sure you've heard this. You've kind of got this celebrity status, and it's not just for Cabo, it's kind of, you're kind of a go-to person in Mexico real estate, I'll say, right? And probably you go to a lot of different, I think you attend a lot of different seminars in the industry, States, Canada. But one of the places I think that you got that kind of status was you were one of the first agents that did home and house HGTV, hunters, right? HGTV, but it was House Hunters International.
The first one was Mexico Life.
Mexico, okay.
So over 10 years ago, the production company that works with HGTV had an idea of taking a very successful reality real estate show that was called Hawaii Life. So it was, if I got it right, two brothers in Hawaii that were surfers.
Okay.
And they decided to sell real estate. And they made a reality show around it. And they wanted to take that model and adapt it to Mexico. So the first season of Mexico Life, they started finding destinations, of course Cabo being one of them, I think Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, Playa del Carmen. And so I did, I think, a couple episodes on the first season, and it took off really well. And so we did it for a period of 4 years. You know what? That was the second show. The first one was Beachfront Bargain Hunt.
Beachfront Bargain,
Beachfront Bargain Hunt. And so that was the first show, and then the second show was Mexico Life. So in total, I did like 10 episodes over, I would say, a 4-year run, 2014 to maybe 2017 or 18. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time of your clients. And you're building a business, you're running a business, and you're doing that. And also, it's very much a formula on these reality TV shows, so that it was not real to me. And so for me, it was not authentic. And so I wanted to have something more authentic. So I just transitioned that into one camera guy, 2 camera. Now we have 6 people in our media.
So do you have your own production company?
Yeah, 6 people.
Wow. So did that project you and kind of say, wait a minute, I could do this in a different fashion. Nothing's predetermined. Nothing. And so let's kind of segue into the podcast. Like, how many podcasts a year do you do?
I think we were probably close to 250.
Wow.
Since 209? Okay, so just over 200. And we started in the pandemic, so in 2020. So 4.5 years, let's say. And so what's the math? 50?
50.
One a week.
Okay,
Right.
one a week. And how do you choose, like, is it you that actually does this, like, hey, let's try this guy. I met this guy at a conference, because I saw your interview with the Playboy Mansion guy, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great one.
Yeah.
I really, you know, and I like when you keep it local too. Like, I remember just turning one of your videos, and I'm like, you're with Rabbi Benny. And I'm like, and that's my rabbi. I'm like, why didn't I think of that? I was like, and it was great. It really was.
I didn't know how. Oh, you know, because we have so many agents, so many people on the team. Once again, I use my network and the people around me, and they're like, you know, I met someone really interesting, and I want to introduce you to them. And so that a lot of times when they're on the podcast, it's my first time meeting them.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm just naturally inquisitive, and I'm just asking real, raw, authentic questions to get to know them. And so it spans a variety. So it's a combination of my ideas, people on the team, our agents, or someone I just meet at the coffee place, and it's like, oh, your story's really interesting.
I really like the combination. You go in depth on really great real estate podcasts, and then you go into community podcasts. I think it's a great combination. That's why I gotta ask him, like, how does he decide who gets on? One of the best, one of my favorites for real estate development was Scott Purcell, who's on your team, right? And you've done a few with him. And he's just, his in-depth about pre-construction and the way he put together some of the stuff, and you've become really amazing at this, right? Like, every time I do a podcast, I look at Mark and I'm like, it was horrible, right? It's like, no, it was good.
When did you start doing podcasts?
I'd say maybe 2 years ago, Mark. Yeah, 2 years.
And how many now?
I said, I'm going to do one once a week, and I just couldn't, it's hard, right? And so we do it, we've been better lately, but I've got some, I've only probably got a combination of maybe 30 podcasts total, right? But there are some ones that I look back and I'm like, that wasn't that bad, I think I'm getting better at this, but I just like the conversation. My whole life I wanted to have a radio show, talking, but I like the way, because it's not just talking real estate. Like when I watch you and Tom this morning, right? Just like
talking about music, movies.
He starts bringing up, I think he started bringing up Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, I was like, where are we going with this?
Like, what's going on here? And then you talking about first concerts. It's just it's a couple of human beings speaking, and then getting kind of back to related to business, or how it got started, or the kind of the mentality behind it.
I think you did a good thing 2 years ago to decide to do the podcast, because when you get really busy like we are, your time is so valuable, and you figure out, like, okay, how do I scale my knowledge? How do I do 3 things at once? So if you can meet someone, if you can learn something, you can create content, and you can influence your audience and grab new audience all in one, that's scaling in my book, right?
And so that's another thing. Someone told me yesterday, I said, I'm going to do a podcast with Fletcher Wheaton and Nick Fong before the seminar. And they're like, well, let me give you just one tip I'm going to give you. And I was like, go ahead. And they said, when you're conducting the podcast, try and figure out what the intent is for the business. And I never kind of thought, I just thought it was kind of flowing organically in the interview. But bring in rare, bring it in to the conversation. I'm like, and I said, you know what, I'm going to watch, and I've seen you over the years. I think it just comes natural to you, it seems, but you're able to convey knowledge, make the person you're interviewing with feel comfortable, and always get the Ronival in there, you know? Super important, right? So, you've been doing it only 4 years? That's amazing. I mean, that's really amazing. So, tell me about like some of the stuff you're doing, the podcast. How many subscribers, like how many followers do you?
I don't know.
I mean, you must be.
Yeah, if you get too caught up on it, it's because coming from sales, being in sales, it's all about numbers. Like how many properties did you sell? How much money did I make? And then when you start playing the social media game, how many followers, how many subscribers, how many likes, how many views? And it can be overwhelming, right? And I think if you go back to authenticity and what you're passionate about, then it never fails. So it doesn't really matter.
And so let's segue a little bit and pivot into, you've gotten more recently, I think you've been involved in a lot of developments in Cabo, and a few in Cerritos up here. And your mentality, is it geared more towards a developmental mentality or a residential individual mentality?
Going back once again is you have to know the market, you have to know the trends, you have to think, I only have 24 hours in a day, and I don't want to be working all those hours in the day, and where am I the best use and where do I leverage? So over 5 years ago, I saw in Cabo, throughout Baja California Sur, trends of, there's no more property. People are needing to build. And so my business needs to be addressing that market need. So development department, a closing department, a marketing department, a media department, right? Transactions department. So getting all that in the business so that I am, as a business, able to serve my clients and the market needs, right? And it's a lot of time, it's a lot of financial commitment, it's a lot of stress, but it's well worth it when you see the market go down, you go up, and you're able to ride that wave. And not always positive. This year has been an off year for all of us. A lot of agents have dropped out. I was just in the annual MLS meeting last week, and I know that at least 100 agents dropped their MLS subscription, right?
It's the subscription.
I think they're at 1,200. They were at 1,300 or something. And when we first got started, I remember there were 200.
200 agents,
right? And it was a Microsoft Access database. That was the MLS system. It wasn't Flex MLS. It wasn't using the latest, greatest technology. And now we're the premier destination when it comes to real estate technology and second home markets for especially the Americans and Canadian clients.
And so talk a little bit about, being that you're all over in southern Baja, you know the Los Cabos market, and you're one of, and I was talking to Fletcher Wheaton earlier from RE Mexico, and kind of what I wanted to do, the idea today was to have brokers come up that actually knew the Pacific market, and you're one of those people that can really speak and know. I've heard you talk about the PDU of Todos Santos. I saw that you just you did a podcast with Jenny of Hotelita, right? Which was great. She's a friend, and I think it was so that to me was like someone speaking knowledgeably. You have your team up here. You have your office presence. So tell me what you've seen as far as the growth and development compared with Cabo years ago and now Todos Santos.
Okay, so the similar trends to what I saw happen in Cabo probably 10 years ago, which is people first start in the satellite areas, Todos Santos, where they buy land and they build a house. So I want to buy 2,000 square meters, I build a house. The house is very simple, basic, it fits the needs of the second home real estate purchaser, homeowner. And after a few years, they're like, this is too much. This is a lot of maintenance. And I need something smaller. I'd like a gated community. I'd like amenities. And then in comes the developer. The developer is like, wow, there's so much land around here. I could do 30 houses in this 10,000 meter piece of land. And so they design a project, they contact someone like you or me, and they do pre-sales, they sell it, brings in 20, 30 new people that didn't even know Todos Santos existed.
Yep.
And they bring their friends and family, and then it starts growing in this organic way. Then you add to it market trends like the pandemic, where all real estate markets globally accelerated. And so developers are looking at our destination and like, land's too expensive in Cabo. So I'm gonna go where I could buy land at a third of the cost, a quarter of the cost, and I'm gonna do what Cabo did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so what I see is more density. Unfortunately for Todos Santos, I know they don't like going vertical, but Cerritos certainly loves that, right? Pescadero doesn't really like that.
Yeah.
And so Cerritos is, and it's a lot of growing pains and the same thing in Los Cabos, still going through a lot of growing pains, mostly in infrastructure, right? Water, electricity, roads, drainage, traffic. And so we see it also in Los Barriles, people complaining about traffic. And to imagine, most of our clients, if they go to Los Barriles, they're like, this is a sleepy town. But the locals saying, wow, there's too many people here.
Yeah.
And then they're going into areas that we call the Paradise Coast, which is El Cardenal.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing clients buying over $1 million houses in that area where you could buy a $200,000 beachfront lot, right? Yeah. I mean, when you first came here, what were beachfront lots selling for? $100,000? 75?
There were less than 100, and some you could find untitled properties. I mean, I still kick myself today, like I just wouldn't buy an untitled property at that point because they were waiting titles from the Ejido. 20, 25,000. I was like,
beachfront?
Yeah.
How long ago?
This was in 2000 when I arrived, right? But untitled.
Yep.
Most of them were 50, 75, but there were still like those bargains out there, right?
And what is that selling for now?
It's probably 1-2.
Just the land?
Yeah. I mean, it's the growth in what we've seen, and that's why, like, one of the things you spoke about is the growth of Cabo, and it's still happening. You know, Todos Santos, you had mentioned, like, you know, there's that, it's those people that have already have, and like I had spoken about this as well before about, you know, people already have, and like, no, we got to stop this. We got to stop this growth, right? And then there's growing with some integrity. And a lot of people up here don't want to see the Cabo growth method, right? And are worried about the infrastructure that you had mentioned, right? It's real. I mean, but the nice thing is we don't have, well, nice depending upon how you look at it, for water consumption, there's no golf courses, right? We kind of, you guys, you know, right now, I was down in Cabo the other day. I couldn't believe how much traffic there was, right? I'm like, oh my God.
What time of day were you?
And it was midday.
Yeah.
It was like, I figured I caught it where it'd be like, okay, everyone's working and I'm going to catch, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, and even it starts up on 19 coming into Cabo, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to, like, I saw like first case of like a little bit of road rage in Todos Santos. I was like, what's that, right? Like, you know, people are like, there's only one road in, one road out, right? So, but we're starting to see a little traffic. You can't, like, you just came to the office at 9 o'clock in the morning. Could you find the parking spot, or was it?
It was a little bit challenging. I mean, it's not anything, I mean, right across the street, but
Yeah.
I mean, I had to do a little loop around.
Yeah, I mean, people are upset about that. No less 6-story condos at Cerritos, right?
Yep.
So it's one of those, being here for the amount of time, I need to be responsible in each move that I'm making, right? And it's not, sometimes it's tough to navigate that road, right? To keep people happy, keep locals happy. What are you doing, Rich? What do you know? So I imagine you've gone through this multiple times.
For sure, and some people, especially the locals, they look at us as the enemy because we're the ones that are bringing people to the destination, rising prices, so affordability is an issue, and the traffic, the infrastructure, for good and bad. We're bringing English-speaking people that are not speaking Spanish, that don't understand fully the Mexican culture, and so there's this gentrification going on, right? And so I understand that, and so I get some of that negativity pointed towards me, but that's no different anywhere in the world.
Anywhere, I agreed. You had mentioned like foreigners coming in not speaking Spanish. Mm-hmm. I didn't know this. I saw a reel that you did in Spanish.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow.
That's
I was like, I've never heard him speak Spanish before.
Richard, that's the power of AI.
I mean,
no, I speak Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, Nick speaks Spanish? It was like kind of like a Bo Jackson Nike commercial, like Bo does, you know. I was just like, wow, his Spanish is really good, you know. So, and a lot of people do come down, and you know, I feel that there's, you know, for me, I came down, I started a business that wasn't real estate, and I kind of pivoted into real estate. But I learned Spanish at that. It was a bar, restaurant, furniture store all in one, and I learned Spanish in that store. So I learned what I would call pescadero Spanish, okay. Right? Like real rustic, real right. Kind of, you know, heavy accent. But yes. So when I started speaking Spanish to you know, friends of mine, they're like, no,
that's not the Spanish you want to use.
You need to learn a little better, Rich. Like, yeah. You know, not every sentence ends with way. So I know we got to get over to the seminar, but mm-hmm. I wanted to talk a little bit about just if you can share with us kind of, you must have some stories mm-hmm. showing real estate, or just kind of a funny story that you might share with mm-hmm. family, friends, that, hey, this happened today. Is this like, I know I've got a, you know.
Okay, funny story or interesting story?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Gosh, there's so many. Give me a topic, and then I'll get my thoughts going in a direction.
Let's say that you were out showing property and this happened. Like all of a sudden, like you know, I'm going to share one at the seminar today, kind of a situation that happened. But you know, being a Baja experience, mm-hmm. maybe showing property.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, early in my real estate career, it's very typical in Cabo. You're picking up. Is that the bell? Where you have to go? School is out. No, it's you pick up your clients typically at the resort, right? And they're on vacation. So coming from Chicago, selling for a couple of years, that wasn't the case. It was the primary home. It wasn't a second home. People weren't on vacation. They were getting off of work, and you were showing properties. But here, you pick up the client at the resort, and many times they have a drink in their hand, and they were 10 in the morning, like wasted. Yeah. And that to me was a real eye-opener that I was like, okay, very professional, only a couple of years selling real estate in Chicago. My first 5 years professional, I was in IT consulting, corporate America, and I was like, okay, real estate is different here.
Yeah.
And so that really set in my mind the way I look, the way I dress is different. The way I speak, the way I relate to people. And it's such an emotional purchase for the majority of our clients buying a second home. It's something that they don't need to do, but they want to do.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, it was, okay, they're walking in with drinks in their hands, they're half in the bag, and we're going to look at properties. Good luck. So you kind of long for the journey, right? Yeah. So you're playing tour guide / real estate advisor, and so it allowed me to lower my guard, be more like personable and less professional. But nowadays, there's more and more people being introduced to our areas, and as a result, you have many more different personalities.
Yeah.
And as a real estate professional, and what I tell my agents is, you have to, it's like you're a chameleon. You have to be able to read your clients super fast, and you have to adapt.
Yeah.
And so the better you are at that as a real estate agent, the more successful you are.
And we're feeling that up here a lot more. I think the ambiance, the real estate ambiance, the people who we're receiving now, it's a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
There's more of a profession. This used to be the Wild West up here, right?
Right.
I mean, when I first started, it was like,
You meet people at the bar.
Yeah,
and you're writing a contract.
some of the stuff that happened. It's like people used to show up with, like, before they put a limit. I remember people coming with bags of cash for a closing, right? I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on here, right? And so I think the level of professionalism has come a long way. You had mentioned like attire. I remember, like, I love the fact that I go to work in shorts and
You could do flip-flops.
yeah,
right?
I mean, and then it's funny because now, like, I'll go to a seminar, I'll go somewhere in Cabo on business, and they'll be like, you can't go like that. I'm like, I'm going to Cabo, right? I'm not going to New York. I'm not going to, they're like, no. Cabo's, and it is. It's kind of a different thing, And so, are there any last comments you would like to make as far as, we're going to do the seminar today. I know you're going to speak. And what about anything you see as a future growth, as far as what you see coming up the highway, so to speak? What do you see for Todos Santos, Pescadero? What do you see for the future?
I think what we can expect is, I don't see big resorts like what we see in Cabo, but what I do see is more structured, planned communities. And I think there's a buyer demand for that. I think for the developers and the real estate professionals that understand what the buyers and the trends are and can design and build around that are going to be the most successful. So I don't think it's a mystery, or should it be a mystery for us or developers. You just have to follow, I believe, the Cabo playbook that's already been told. It's already been written. And see, okay, maybe it's not 100%, but 75% of what happened over the last 30 years, if 75% of that is going to happen in our area in that timeline, then we have a structure and a basis by which to plan. And then we make adjustments along the way. We're always making adjustments in our business, no different in regards to that.
How long have you been, like, are you coaching anyone yourself? Or?
Yeah, I mean, my own team.
Your own team,
right?
okay.
So we have like 120 agents, in several offices. So yeah, from that aspect, yes, but not professionally like my own coaching company, no.
No, is that in the future maybe?
I don't think so.
No.
I think for me, it's you have to pick your battles, and sure, you can make money. Sure, you can be satisfied professionally, personally, doing coaching, for example. But if you're already satisfied and you're meeting, scratching that itch, so to speak, with what you're doing or other things, there's only so many hours in the day, like we were talking about earlier.
So how long have you been getting, I know that you're with Tom.
So I've been with Tom since 2018, so coming on 7 years.
Wow, okay. Have you ever thought about doing your own TV show, TV production?
I thought of it, and that's all I did. No, there's no future in that.
No.
There's no future, and we get some of our agents that ask, and it's too intrusive, and it's already to a certain level too much. And you have to constantly balance that, and why put yourself in that position? So I respect and admire a lot of the people that do that in our industry. It's just not for me.
Got it. I want to thank you so much for coming up today and doing this podcast, Nick. You really are, like, when I think about how busy I am, I always kind of use you and say, wait a minute, you're like, this is nothing compared to, the scaling that
Yep.
you've done. So I want to say, just thank you for doing what you're doing. You really help the industry a lot. Thank
Okay.
you.
My pleasure.